I am Morley, the wizard, introducing you to adventure. It's Dungeon Fantasy Board Game. This family is on a challenging adventure in a scary dungeon, seeking treasure guarded by strange and wonderful monsters. Take it from Morley, Dungeon and Dungeons and Dragons games from TSR play better. After all, we are the game wizards.
Everyone could use more heroic fantasy adventure in their lives. And with a few of your friends and a little imagination, you can find it. Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition. Check it out at dndinsider.com. Get together, roll some dice, have fun.
The world's #1 role-playing game where you get to interact with your friends as never before. The only limitation is your imagination. Dungeons & Dragons continuously evolves in a magical, mysterious fantasy world. You choose your own identity. You control your own destiny. Every single game's a brand new adventure. Find out what the rest of the world is talking about. Dungeons & Dragons. The adventure starts here.
the sprawling dunes of Menectaroon hide many secrets. These demon-infested sands are home to powerful new enemies. But the most dangerous enemy is a former friend. Now, the adventurers of Stormreach can test their strength against each other. Start a spirited brawl in the local tavern. Or dominate your foes in deathmatch arenas. Train to even higher levels and gain access to new spells, new feats, and new enhancements. Buy and sell equipment at the auction house. Find the sword of your dreams. And hone your skills in more solo dungeons. The Demon Sands. More free content for Dungeons & Dragons subscribers.
Rated T for teen.
All right, team. Here's the plan. Bruner, get close and provoke her. Cat, attack from a distance to give us cover. Wolfgar, you... All right. Remember, stick to the...
Help, Beatrice!
Worked perfectly. So, stick to the plan? Put down
Open the world of advanced Dungeons & Dragons action figures. Strongheart, Bronze Dragon, Morduk, Nightmare. Discover a world of mystery and magic.
Stand back, Strongheart. You shall never have this treasure.
Evil is no match for good until we meet again.
Advanced Dungeons & Dragons action figures from LJN. Pure magic.
The year is 1978. Dungeons & Dragons, already a growing phenomena, was now becoming the stuff of legend. Oh, there were minor limitations, yes. But the passion was there, man. It was there.
Brignar, Elfie 6, Beak Gwenders of Crudel. The three of you enter the cave full of fungus, and you see two hulking shapes, a troll and a minotaur.
Which one's the troll, man?
Dude, the eraser's the troll.
I thought the eraser was the minotaur.
The clothes peg is the minotaur.
What's the lint, man?
Oh. That's just lint.
Oh, jeez. All right. Then I attack the troll.
Ah, battle mats, painted lead miniatures. wet erase markers. Technology was advancing and so was D&D. Well, most of the time.
Is it my turn yet?
Nope, let Beak Gwenders of Crudel finish his turn first.
I still have to destroy the troll, my friend. Okay, so what's they go again?
To hit AC 0. It's on your character sheet.
Now, can I go now?
No, wait a minute. No, not yet. That's right, and
Check
you're
it
hit.
out with the damage. And what do we got?
Sweet.
Now,
Yeah,
can
that's
I
right.
get the damage roll? There you go. What's that?
Nicely done.
Now, can I go now?
Yes.
Attack the troll.
The edition was third. The D20 system was king. D&D was clearly now an institution. The books were many. The gameplay was deep. And the rules were sometimes involved.
I grapple.
What?
I grapple the troll.
Well, and how do you do that? Hang on, no worries. I got it. Right here, the great book. Grapple. 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 Four steps. Step 1, attack of opportunity. You provoke an attack of opportunity from the target you are trying to grab.
I slash with my sword.
Great.
Rapid attack.
Okay, your turn. Go for it.
12.
12? All right.
Dungeons and Dragons would not be the game it is if not for constant evolution and innovation. But this, I pledge to you, while there will be room for refinement, the game will remain the same. The game will remain the same.
Challenge your imagination to come alive and to battle with the creatures of Dungeons and Dragons. Grapple against the forces of evil as a Marvel Comics superhero. Hunt adventure and glory as Indiana Jones. The all-new role-playing games of TSR and Dungeons and Dragons. Unleash the power of your imagination.
Now what do I do? Okay, this is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons video game cartridge.
You have to buy it separately to play on the Intellivision video game system.
Mom and Dad have to hook it up to the TV. What next? We're trying to find the crown, but it's real easy to get lost. So don't be surprised if the dragon finds you first. Holy cats, you just killed the dragon. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
Advanced Dungeons and Dragons video game cartridge and Intellivision master component from Mattel Electronics, each sold separately.
In the eerie world of deep, dark dungeons, mystery and magic seem real. There's good against evil with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons action figures. War Duke, Kellic, Strongheart, and Bronze Dragon, each sold separately.
Beware, Strongheart. You will cast an evil spell and steal the treasure. Well, evil is no match for good. The treasure is safe.
Advanced Dungeons and Dragons action figures, Kellic, War Duke, Bronze Dragon, Strongheart, each sold separately from LJN.
Don't touch that!
Navigate the maze. Escape the dungeons. Slay the dragons.
Don't you think that's just a little bit out of our league?
Dungeons and Dragons, rated PG-13, starts Friday. Your dungeon master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position. You're playing the most phenomenal game ever created. Your skin grows cold from your first glimpse of the enormous beast. It's a product of your imagination. Survival depends on a quick, decisive move. Your choices are limited. Stand and fight, or run. Use your lightning bolt. Victory is yours.
Win the treasure.
TSR Hobbies, Dungeons & Dragons games. Products of your imagination.
Open your mind to Dungeons & Dragons computer game from Mattel Electronics. It will lead your imagination down a dungeon labyrinth wherein lies the dragon's treasure. Steal his treasure, but make no false moves. For in Dungeons & Dragons, a dead end is a dead end. Dungeons & Dragons from Mattel Electronics.
Ha! Ihr kriecht durch Kerker, um mich zu besiegen? Narren! Meine Monster werden euch vernichten! Uah! Die Helden greifen an mit Zaubersprüchen, Schwertern, Keulen und Zaubertrank! Entscheidet die Schlacht in 11 spannenden Missionen mit 40 Figuren und vielen Aktionskarten. Dungeons & Dragons. Deine Zeit ist gekommen.
Episódio de hoje, o mistério revelado.
E por aqui encontrará a saída, amigo.
Agora eu descubro como ele desaparece. Eu sabia!
Episódio de hoje, o que os olhos não veem.
Peraí, cadê a Sheila?
Tô aqui. Alguém quer?
Ela tava aqui o tempo todo.
Episódio de hoje, um lugar seguro.
Pessoal, eu protejo vocês! Aqui é mais seguro! Tchau, ei! Esperem por mim!
Episódio de hoje, a jaula da fera.
Eu capturei o Tiamat. Eu não faria isso.
Episódio de hoje, a jornada para o topo. Episódio de hoje, a pergunta sem resposta.
Mestre, estamos rodando há vários dias e esse ponteiro não baixa. Como pode?
Eu sei lá.
Episódio de hoje, o duelo. Episódio de hoje, um mistério inexplicável.
Presto, arranja o celular pra gente curtir um som.
Usem o meu, amigos.
Mestre dos Magos? Obrigada.
Fala, mestre!
Now, Bobby! Let's go! Wow!
Thanks, Bobby! No sweat, Diana.
not run out.
Come on! We've got to find Dungeon Master!
Give me your weapons! All right! Quickly now! Pupils! Hurry!
You cannot escape. This game is ended.
Abra, come here!
I'm dreaming. Don't wake me up. I can't look. Sure you can.
We did it! We're home!
Home, sweet home.
It's the Badger! Run!
Go, Eric!
Time to go back home, kids.
Let's go, let's go!
You'll never escape.
Go, go, go! Presto, do something!
Wait, where's Uni?
It really saved our marriage.
We couldn't find a single activity we'd like to do together.
He's so into his skeet shooting.
Pull!
And I love my yoga. I mean, Dungeons & Dragons always sounded like so much fun. But with that 20-sided die, I thought, oh, brother.
And all those manuals.
But that's where the book comes in.
Have you ever wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons but were too intimidated to try? You are not alone. D&D is a hugely popular pastime that lets you ride your imagination into a mythical world full of beasts and sorcery. But many people think D&D is too complicated. Not to worry, friends. D&D for Dummies makes it fun and easy, giving you all you need to play, including ready-made characters and maps.
D&D for Dummies hooked it up. It gave me the confidence I needed to begin my journey from first-level barbarian to epic-level dungeon master.
And it gave us something fun and creative that we can do together.
That too.
Available at your favorite book.
Gallstaff, you have entered the door to the north. You are now by yourself, standing in a dark room. The pungent stench of mildew emanates from the wet dungeon walls.
Where are the Cheetos?
They're right next to you.
I cast a spell.
Where's the Mountain Dew?
In the fridge, duh!
I want to cast a spell.
Can I have a Mountain Dew?
Yes, you can have a Mountain Dew, just go get it.
I can cast any of these, right? On the list?
Yes, any of the first level ones.
I'm gonna get a soda. Anyone want one? Hey, Graham, I'm not in the room, right?
What room?
I want to cast Magic Missile.
The room where he's casting all these spells from.
He hasn't cast anything yet.
I am, though, if you'd listen. I'm casting Magic Missile.
Why are you casting Magic Missile? There's nothing to attack here.
I'm attacking the darkness.
Fine, fine. You attack the darkness. There's an elf in front of you.
Whoa!
That's me, right?
He's wearing a brown tunic, and he has gray hair and blue eyes.
No, I don't. I have gray eyes.
Let me see that sheet.
Well, it says I have blue, but I decided I wanted gray eyes.
Whatever. Okay, you guys can talk to each other now if you want.
Hello.
Hello.
I am Galstaff, Sorcerer of Light.
Then how come you had to cast magic missile?
You guys are being attacked.
Do I see that happening?
No, you're outside by the tavern.
Cool, I get drunk.
There are 7 ogres surrounding you.
How could they surround us? I had Mordenkainen's magical watchdog cast.
No, you didn't.
I'm getting drunk. Are there any girls there?
I totally did. You asked me if I wanted any equipment before this adventure, and I said no. But I need material components for all my spells, so I cast Mordenkainen's faithful watchdog.
But you never actually cast it.
Roll the dice to see if I'm getting drunk.
Yeah, you are.
Are there any girls there?
Yeah.
I did, though. I completely said when you asked me.
No, you didn't. You didn't actually say that you were casting the spell, so now there's ogres, okay?
Ogres? Man, I got an ogre slaying knife. It's got a +9 against ogres.
You're not there. You're getting drunk.
Okay, but if there's any girls there, I want to do them.
There you have it. A frightening look into America's most frightening pastime. Remember that it's not your children's fault that they're being drawn into a satanic world of nightmare. It's their gym teacher's fault for making them feel outcast when they couldn't do one single pull-up.
It began as a cult phenomenon, then it caught on. Now a new game is sweeping the country.
You will burn forever and ever in eternal torment. You are no more.
The role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons debuted in 1974. It became a hit with many adolescents, but critics claimed it was an invitation to devil worship.
The witchcraft, the demonism, the spells.
And worse.
It is not fun and games.
The media set off a satanic panic.
A lot of adults who think it's been connected to a number of suicides and murders.
That connection has been largely debunked.
It's nothing but a witch hunt.
And the game has generated an unexpected legacy.
This was a revolution.
On a summer day in August 1979, the family of a missing teenager called a Texas investigator named William Deere with some startling information.
Dallas Egbert had disappeared from Michigan State University during the summer session.
James Dallas Egbert III was a 16-year-old sophomore, and his family hired Deere to help find him.
He was a computer nerd, and he had a large amount of hair and carried his little briefcase. I wasn't sure that I was being told exactly what precipitated his disappearance. So I said, well, I guess the best thing we can do is I'll go to Michigan State University and I'll find out for myself exactly what was going on.
What he found when he went to Egbert's dorm room was a shelf of neatly stacked books and something else.
There was a cork board with a series of tacks.
In what might look like a random pattern of thumbtacks, the investigator saw what he thought could be a clue. The shape resembled a building that was part of a network of underground campus steam tunnels, which students told him they sometimes explored.
We set out with maps, and we started going into the tunnels one morning with press everywhere. I entered with the idea that I did not know what I was getting into.
But he had a hunch that it had something to do with a game that was growing in popularity.
This is a quest in a fantasy world of castles and dungeons, monsters and dragons. This world has become real to these people. It's all part of a game called Dungeons & Dragons.
Dungeons & Dragons, also known as D&D, was created by the late Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in the early 1970s. It was born out of their love for military war games, and they devised scenarios with made-up characters that incorporated their interest in history and fantasy fiction. Gygax said it provided an escape.
All of us at times feel a little inadequate in dealing with the modern world,
it would feel much better if we knew that we were a superhero or a mighty wizard.
The game is played in a group, and the guide, or dungeon master,
you enter a very small room,
talks the players through the fictional, sometimes violent adventures they will go on.
And each has an elaborate scoring sheet for his character, with points for wisdom and strength and the like. A throw of these special dice decide the outcome of battles in an intricate scoring system. Nothing is acted out. The real action is in the mind.
Now you guys are entering the castle.
But some, including Deer, worried that while the action was imaginary, some kids might take it too far.
You're leaving the world of reality into the world of fantasy. It advocated murder, decapitation. And I'm going, this isn't a healthy game. How can it be a healthy game?
That game, and Deer's hunch that Egbert was playing it in the tunnels, made great fodder for headlines, but it was a dead end, and Deer went back to Texas empty-handed.
It wasn't within a day or two that the phone call came in. And I was told where I could find him, that he was still alive. So we flew out, and I'm trying to remember his exact words, but he couldn't really say a lot. And I left it like that.
Egbert was a complicated teenager whose disappearance was never fully explained and who later committed suicide.
There was speculation he was the victim of a campus game called Dungeons and Dragons, but after a month-long nationwide search, he was found unharmed.
Deer fed into the growing suspicions about D&D in a book that pointed to the game as a culprit in Egbert's disappearance. But Tim Kask, who helped develop D&D with Gary Gygax, says Deer was just hyping the story for personal gain.
He was a publicity hound, and he knew that he could hang it on D&D and gather a lot of media frenzy, and he did. Dallas Egbert is a tragic story. Brilliant young man, sent off to university at 15. It had nothing to do with D&D in the steam tunnels.
Still, that attention set off an unexpected chain of events.
Our stock took off, literally. We sold thousands of more copies within 90 days of all that stuff happening, and we were up in print runs. That's when we took off.
Sales nearly quadrupled the year after Egbert disappeared. As the cult game was going mainstream, Dungeons and Dragons generated interest in two conflicting groups, people who wanted to buy it and those who wanted to ban it. And televangelists took on a new crusade.
They are kids like yours, like the ones in your neighborhood. Kids who are turning to darkness because society has shut God out.
Conservative fundamentalist Christian group would see a game that involved satanic figures, evil figures. That would be a source of concern.
Dungeons and Dragons has been called the most effective introduction to the occult in the history of man. It is a fantasy role-playing game that teaches demonology, witchcraft.
Gygax, a religious man himself, was put on the defensive. The company hired psychologist Dr. Joyce Brothers to fend off criticism.
There is good and evil in life, and the way Dungeons and Dragons is set up is that good triumphs over evil.
Tim Kask says that in private, he and Gygax couldn't believe the game was being linked to devil worship.
Without sounding disrespectful at all, we laughed our butts off most of the time. Because it was like, are you kidding me? You really think we're teaching your children demonology?
But the controversy grew after the news media reported that a string of teen murders and suicides had one thing in common. The killers or victims were D&D players.
Mary Towie was killed by two friends, Ron Adcox and Darren Molitor. The crucial point is, can a game create psychosis, or is someone like Darren Molitor an accident waiting to happen, with or without the game?
If you found 12 kids in murder-suicide with one connecting factor in each of them, wouldn't you question it? And that's all people would do.
I would certainly do it in a scientific manner, and this is as unscientific as you can get. It's nothing but a witch hunt.
But many grieving parents believed there was a connection. Pat Pulling's teenage son committed suicide, and she spoke publicly, claiming that his game playing contributed to his death.
These children not only begin to have violent dreams or violent thoughts or negative, depressing type things, they become very much a part of this character.
Young people commit suicide for a whole variety of reasons. In my research, I saw nothing that led anyone towards depression or suicide.
Northwestern University professor of sociology, Gary Allen Fine, wrote a book called Shared Fantasy and studied the D&D subculture.
They were the kind of kids and young people who didn't go to dances or date on the weekends. It was part of a nerd culture, I guess you would say.
I can still throw death spells, huh, Steve?
The D&D culture intrigued filmmakers and fiction writers. Rona Jaffe's book, Mazes and Monsters, was loosely based on what people thought had happened to Dallas Egbert. It was made into a movie starring a young Tom Hanks.
Let the journey begin. Well, which way do we go?
They went down the storm tunnels and got to play D&D in the tunnels. We had to like sit around a table. Like how awesome would it have been if it turned out that D&D was like what they did?
Cory Doctorow is a writer and activist who early on was profiled as an avid D&D player in this story from 1985.
The moral panic was mostly laughable. The idea that there were people who were fundamentalist Christians for whom Dungeons and Dragons represented some kind of existential threat to my soul was silly. You could go around and have really satisfying arguments with like profoundly ignorant grown-ups.
Over time, the Dungeons and Dragons controversy lost steam. And today, the common thread between D&D players is less likely to include any reported links to violence, and more likely to involve Emmy Awards and literary prizes. Stephen Colbert and writers Ta-Nehisi Coates and Junot Diaz are among the millions of smart, bookish kids who played D&D and shrugged off any sense of panic.
People were bananas. My mom moral panicked. She was way more worried about us getting shanked, you know, or getting caught up in some nonsense.
It was a lot of fun. It also provided them a variety of other skills, leadership skills, negotiation skills.
We helped each other without even knowing it, man. I learned an enormous amount about what it meant to be courageous and what it meant to be passionate and the kind of hard moral choices that one needs to make in real life in this kind of fake, sort of imagined plane of action.
And for Diaz, as a young immigrant from the Dominican Republic, the game had special meaning.
This was a revolution. Being a bunch of kids of color in a society that tells us that we're nothing, being permitted under our own power to be heroic, to have agency, to do the hero stuff, to take and be on adventures. There was nothing like it for us. It was very, 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 very impactful.
While some parents used to worry about what kids were playing, now they're more likely to be worried about how they're playing.
Cell phones and social media have revolutionized the way we live, but how has plugging in changed the way your kids are growing up?
Through the 20th century, you have this tension between free play and controlled media. I mean, that we were concerned about what sitting in darkened movie theaters would do to our children. Just wait 30 years and they will be worried about what their children are doing. And it will no doubt be something different than sexting and bullying as we know it today. This is not a new phenomenon. It just changes with each new technology.
The American Academy of Pediatrics says that in this media-saturated age, it's important for kids to use their imaginations in free play. And in a twist, the role-playing games that set off a moral panic in the past may look more like a solution than a problem to today's parents.
It's a great thing to dream yourself in other places, and it helps understand who you are. It's just nice to spend a lot of time thinking, imagining, in a group, collaborating.
Bobby is awesome.
Imagination is a good thing, man. Very powerful.
Children anywhere from grammar school on up. Not so with a lot of adults who think it's been connected to a number of suicides and murders. The idea of the game, which is played by highly imaginative and intelligent kids, is to assume the role of one of the characters. One game can go on for weeks or even months. The problem seems to be that some kids take it more seriously than others, take it a step further, playing a character who brings them the power in a game they couldn't possibly get in real life.
About 2 months ago, a green eyeball was seen up in the sky. This eyeball was so big it blotted out the sun, okay?
These young people are playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's an enormously complicated game in which each player chooses an imaginary character he'll assume. There are dwarfs, knights and thieves, gods and devils, magic and spells. It's a journey into a land of fantasy through complicated mazes where you use your wits to kill your enemies before they kill you, all in a quest for wealth and power. The Dungeon Master orchestrates and referees the game, creating scenarios both complicated and terrifying. There is no board, only the dice.
I've never seen dice like these. All different sides.
Six-sided.
What's the point in that?
They're for different things. The four-sided is used mainly for damage from a dagger and dart, and magic users' hit points. Hit points is the damage that you can take before you die.
There are those who are fearful that the game in the hands of vulnerable kids could do harm, and there is evidence that seems to support that view. Timothy Grice, 21, a shotgun suicide. The detective report noted D&D became a reality. Irving Bink Pulling, 16, an avid D&D player, a suicide. Daniel and Stephen Irwin, 16 and 12, a murder and a suicide. The police said they were obsessed with the game. James Allen Kirby, 14 years old, charged with killing his junior high school principal and wounding 3 other people. Police are blaming D&D. Jeffrey Jaklovich, 14. Stephen Loyacano, 16. Michael Dempsey, 17. And the list goes on. The company that makes the Dungeons and Dragons material is TSR Incorporated of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. They estimate there are 3 to 4 million kids who play the game. Last year, they grossed nearly $30 million, with Dungeons and Dragons books and paraphernalia accounting for most of those sales. Gary Gygax owns the company and invented the game. Dieter Sturm is the head of public relations.
There are a number of cases that have been documented where there is some connection between D&D. I'm not saying that D&D is the cause of the death, but paraphernalia from the game has been found at the scene of the death. Notes, suicide notes referring to the game have been found, and all of these people, in a dozen or so cases, have been documented as avid D&D players. And you see no connection whatsoever?
We see no connection for the fact that right now there's some 3 to 4 million players of the game actively throughout the United States. Right at this particular time, 1985, teenage suicide is epidemic across the country, with some 5,000 kids a year now taking their lives. I think that to say that because that child played Dungeons & Dragons, who's to say that that child does not watch television, does not participate in high school sports, or what per se?
I have yet to see one bit of valid clinical evidence to show that this has been anything more than coincidental with a disturbed child.
If you found 12 kids in murder-suicide with one connecting factor in each of them, wouldn't you question it? And that's all people do.
I would certainly do it in a scientific manner, and this is as unscientific as you can get. It's nothing but a witch hunt.
But the families who have suffered the loss of a loved one would disagree. Pat and Lee Pulling and their 12-year-old daughter, Melissa. The Pullings came home one night 3 years ago and found Bink, their son, dead on the front lawn of their home in Montpelier, Virginia. He had shot himself through the heart with his father's handgun. Until that night, they had never heard of the game Dungeons and Dragons. Then they began looking through his things.
We went into the kitchen, and there on the table were what we thought were just regular composition books with schoolwork in it, and much of the Dungeons and Dragons material, along with this curse he had received in the game that day that he died.
The curse that was placed on Bink's D&D character began, "Your soul is mine. I choose the time." In a letter that he left, Bink said he had been summoned to kill himself because he was evil.
It was obvious through his writings that he felt he had assumed this character. But what I couldn't get into my mind was Is it possible? How could anybody do that? How could a 16-year-old that is smart, intelligent, why would they believe that they were something in a game, and why would they kill themselves because somebody else said to do it?
Your son was well-adjusted?
Always. He had never had psychological problems. He was healthy, even physically healthy.
Well, we found that there's been numerous parents who say that the child's had no problems and such. Very conclusively, we go back to details of reports of classmates, of teachers, of friends and such, who very much kind of show that the youngster didn't fit in to school. He had outside problems and generally problems with his family.
We know that in the case of Dungeons and Dragons, upwards of 3 million kids play the game with no apparent serious consequence. That for them it exercises the imagination and is just good fun. But there are those who are afraid that impressionable, vulnerable kids could be harmed by it. Dr. Thomas Radecki is a psychiatrist who teaches at the University of Illinois Medical School and who is chairman of the National Coalition on Television Violence. He has been studying the game for several years and says there are 28 deaths related to Dungeons and Dragons in the last 5 years.
In some of those, it was clearly the decisive element. In other ones, it was just a major element in the thinking of the people at the time they committed suicide or murder. It's not coincidence, not when you have careful documentation, you have careful notes, you have eyewitnesses. For instance, one case, the parents saw their child summon Dungeons and Dragons demons into his room before he killed himself. Another case, the kid thought he had the ability to astral travel, coming from the Dungeons and Dragons game, that he could leave his body and come back. And he had rigged it up just according to the rule book so he could do it. He was surrounded by his materials and put a bullet in his head so he could leave his body, and he's never come back.
This is make-believe, and nobody's murdered, and there's no violence there. I mean, to use an analogy with another game, who is bankrupted by losing a game of Monopoly? Nobody is, because the money is make-believe, the property is make-believe, and the bankruptcy is make-believe.
It is not like Monopoly. There is no board. It is role-playing, which is typically used for behavior modification. If you are using behavior modification and you are doing violent roles and you're doing negative roles continuously, these children not only begin to have violent dreams or violent thoughts or negative, depressing type things, they become very much a part of this character.
You're role-playing, you're rehearsing, you're developing the character hour after hour, day after day. We're really talking about intense involvement in a very serious form of violence.
The important thing to remember is, if you're playing a character, let's say, for instance, you have an evil character. The rules tell you your evil character is allowed in the scope of the rules to murder people and to rape and plunder. If you're playing a good character, you're the defender of the people. You try to stop the people from raping and plundering. Yeah. But it's just your character that does it on the sheet of paper. When the game is over, the game does not tell you to go out and rape and plunder. Yeah.
But for some kids, it's not as simple as that. Melissa claimed that D&D had become more than just a game for her brother Bink.
Someone threatened you?
Yes. My brother threatened to kill me one time.
And we found out later that he had threatened to kill her if she told us that he was playing the game. She knew it, and she was actually scared for her life.
After her son's death, Pat Pulling thoroughly investigated the game. She felt so strongly that it was responsible for her son's death that she formed a network of concerned people to warn others about the dangerous aspects of the game. Because of her involvement with D&D, Mrs. Pulling is often consulted by police departments around the country. Last November, in this deserted area outside the small town of Lafayette, Colorado, two brothers, Daniel and Stephen Irwin, 16 and 12 years old, were found dead. It was a murder-suicide. The story was widely covered by newspapers and television, as was the fact that the police said the deaths were caused by the boys' obsession with the game Dungeons and Dragons. Officer Greg Corey was assigned to the case when the boys were first reported missing. He learned that they used to come to this railroad trestle to play the game.
Both boys were here when you came?
Yes, both boys were
intertwined, their legs intertwined down in this area. The older boy in this area here, the younger boy laying here with the .22 caliber gun next to his head. Where the gun was found was just to the right of his head area.
As a police officer, as an investigator, did you see a connection between what happened here and the game Dungeons and Dragons?
And the investigation showed that it was a focal point of the boys' lives. They were just enthralled in the game. And this comes from witnesses and the family and the brother, that they were totally obsessed with the game. In fact, would play it for 48 hours straight, sort of a marathon playing.
2 weeks after the police chief announced that Dungeons and Dragons had been the cause of the boys' deaths, he issued a final press release with a different version of his earlier statements. TSR claimed they were vindicated, but Pat Pulling couldn't believe that the police changed their story.
And I said, well, you can't change it. If it's the truth, you can't change it. I mean, children are dying, Ed. Children are dying out there, and people are not telling.
Mrs. Pulling was convinced that it was the threat of a lawsuit by TSR rather than the evidence that made the police chief change his story.
Did you threaten to sue the city?
No, we did not threaten to sue. We did send them a letter, which we asked them in a very kind way that they please further investigation and take a look at exactly what all the evidence is and what the details are specifically before they start calling the name of our product into it as being a blame or cause.
But Mrs. Pulling had received a letter from the police chief in Lafayette in which he said that it was his fear of a lawsuit that made him back off.
Yes, he sent me a letter.
The letter to Mrs. Pulling from the chief of police said in part, "I sincerely hope you will understand what has happened and will forgive me. I do not feel very good about myself, and I feel that I have lost a part of my integrity. May I say that the city administrator and city attorney were very supportive of me, but cautious. My obligation to the city as a whole to protect them from serious financial litigation was predominant."
I wept. I mean, I said, boy, you know, maybe somebody was going to really take and pay attention to this now and start doing some serious research and start stopping children from dying over something that they didn't have to die.
I don't think anyone is suggesting that your intentions originally with this game were anything but good. It was a game to have some fun. But in the light of what some people would consider to be strong evidence, don't you really think that you have to rethink your position about the game and at least make known the potential for abuse of the game?
Well, I again have to go back and say there's no link that this is, except perhaps in the minds of those people who are looking desperately for any other cause than perhaps their own failure as a parent for their child's death. And further, anything can be abused. Are we going to try to go around and say, this chair could be used by a violent person to strike another person, therefore it should have a warning label on it saying, caution, this can be used to assault you with?
We would like an impartial inquiry by the Consumer Product Safety Commission to actually look into these deaths, to call the police, call the detectives forward, bring forth the evidence, bring the parents in, look at this. Let's have an inquiry, an open public inquiry, and let's find out the truth.
This Friday, the town of Putnam, Connecticut will hold a town meeting to discuss whether Dungeons and Dragons should continue to be played in their schools. The suicide of a 13-year-old Putnam boy has once again fanned the controversy.
Good evening. Tonight we begin with a story about make-believe adventure and real-life violence, and what some critics fear is a connection between the two in a game called Dungeons and Dragons. Millions of children and teenagers now play Dungeons and Dragons. They are drawn to the adventure, fantasy, and suspense the game creates through mythical characters and complex situations.
But increasingly, parents and psychiatrists are warning that the game is taking some children too far into the realm of dark and violent fantasy. They wonder whether for some children, Dungeons and Dragons becomes more than just a game. Carol Jerome prepared this report.
Okay, you enter a very small room, and there's a large black coffin right in the center. The gate's shut behind you. slamming.
It looks like a few boys around a table, but in their minds, they're fantastical characters in another world, a darker world. Ole is a cavalier. Erwin is a paladin. Dennis is a ranger. Mikey is an illusionist. And Bill is a magic user. Nicholas is a fighter, and his little brother Matthew is a thief. In today's adventure, Mike the Dungeon Master leads them to a castle where they are attacked by wolves in the woods.
What are you guys gonna do?
I'm gonna draw my sword and use my second attack instead of attacking.
What do you do?
Together, they meet each challenge set by the Dungeon Master according to their character, which can be good or evil. They have magic weapons and spells to use to battle men and half-humans and monsters. And each has an elaborate scoring sheet for his character, with points for wisdom and strength and the like. A throw of these special dice decide the outcome of battles in an intricate scoring system. Nothing is acted out. The real action is in the mind.
Now you guys are entering the castle. So you have basically the doors are open to the castle. Sort of somebody taunting your mind saying, come and get me. Suddenly 5 zombies come up, grabbing your leg. What are you gonna do?
I like to hit it with my sword +3.
You roll the dice. Okay, you do sufficient damage and you cut off its arm, you dismember it. But you notice that the arm that you cut off is still hanging onto your leg.
It's not as simple as old-fashioned cowboys and Indians. The goal here is to survive each adventure and gain points for killing enemy humans and monsters, and gather treasure along the way. But this medieval fantasy world is so detailed, so real, that some say it has caused kids to kill in the real world.
Since these games are so violence-oriented, you do not just play at the game, you become the game. You are the game.
Pat Pulling's son Bink shot himself in the heart 3 years ago, hours after a suicide curse was put on his character as he played D&D, as the game is called. Notes he left linked his suicide to the game. Pat Pulling formed a group called BAD, bothered about Dungeons and Dragons. Along with the National Coalition of Television Violence in the States, BAD documents 28 cases of juvenile murder and suicide they claim are linked to D&D. They say it's the general violence and playing with evil characters, suicide curses, and pretend human sacrifice in the game that trigger the tragedies. Ironically, the publicity about one of these cases in 1979 made sales skyrocket.
It has been linked in suicide notes, police reports, and coroner's reports. There have been recently a couple of accidental killings, one in particular related to the game where the boy thought he was a god. Therefore, he begged his brother to shoot him to prove that he was deified. And in fact, of course, the boy died.
I feel they're overreacting a lot. Like, I don't think that this game promotes death or anything. Not the way we play it anyway.
You know, I can tell the difference between reality and fantasy. Just about everyone I play with can.
Sure, there's bloodshed and everything, but I think it's better to shed it in the game than out in real life. My adopted daughter, the fair Irina, has been these past nights bitten by a creature called...
The game's public relations man says the children in the murders and suicides, including Bink Pulling, had other emotional problems already, and notes other elements like the presence of guns in the home.
There has been 0 deaths as the cause of Dungeons & Dragons. The game is played by some 3 to 4 to almost 5 million people now in Canada, in the United States, throughout the world. In fact, 15 other countries. And the game is built around cooperation.
Come on, everybody!
The Dungeons & Dragons ride!
Started in 1973 on a $1,000 loan, D&D now earns $30 million a year for its Wisconsin manufacturer TSR, with spin-offs like this television cartoon series.
There is no escape from the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
Few girls play it, it's mainly teenage boys, and they can spend hundreds of dollars on it in stores like Rigby's in Toronto, on monthly magazines, pocketbooks, guidebooks to over 40 different fantasy adventures, and miniature figurines. And if they like, there are D&D video games too.
Congratulations, oil you have run for next time.
At least 3 government studies in the States confirm a cause and effect relationship between consumption of violent entertainment and increased aggression. Police are also concerned about D&D, but they say they cannot make a conclusive judgment about its role in many of the murders and suicides. One of the most perplexing cases happened here in St. Louis, Missouri. Last April, an 18-year-old art student named Mary Towie was killed by 2 friends, Ron Adcox and Darren Molitor. All 3 played Dungeons and Dragons together, Darren intensively, up to 16 hours a day, sometimes sitting up all night with his character sheets. In his confession to the FBI, Darren included his alias, Demon Sammy Sager, his D&D fighter-assassin name. Darren told police they were fooling around drinking at Mary's house while her parents were away, getting ready for a Friday 13th party, and tied her up to mess with her mind, then put a knotted elastic bandage around her throat and went upstairs to have a couple of beers. When they checked again, Mary was dead, the blood to her brain cut off by the bandage. Darren and Ron then stole valuables from the house, dumped Mary's body in this woods, and fled in her car. When they were caught, they were each wearing one of her earrings. The point is Darren Molitor a cold-blooded killer, or did Demon Sammy Sager take over or change him? Darren's trial was first. The defense lawyer maintains that the game was a major factor in determining Darren's behavior, and he is asking for the lesser charge of manslaughter. The prosecution holds that the game has nothing to do with Darren's actions and is asking for the death penalty. Pat Pulling was here to testify. She and a defense psychiatrist say there are elements here that echo D&D patterns. First, the idea itself that tying someone up is a game. The Friday 13th motif, part of the superstitious magic of D&D. The messing with her mind, the robbery like plunder, the running for survival, the earrings like treasure. But no testimony about the game, including Pat Pulling's, was allowed by the judge. And Darren's lawyer, Lee Patton, was angry at that, saying the court preferred an open and shut case.
In the absence of Dungeons and Dragons, in the absence of the desensitization to violence, I think he probably would have called the police or taken some other action rather than robbing and running.
Darren told Lee Patton, Demon has never died, and Patton is not sure just what that means. Darren's parents don't know much about it, but they feel the game is partly to blame, and they say Darren was worried that being Demon might have affected him.
And he'd sign everything, his papers, while he was going to school, as Demon Molitor.
The prosecution is denying the testimony on the game.
I heard.
Do you think that's important that it be admitted?
Yes, I do. I feel it'll turn the whole thing around. On Darren's behalf.
The victim's parents feel differently.
Our own thoughts have always been that Dungeons and Dragons was totally irrelevant to the entire case, that this was a case strictly of robbery and homicide and nothing else. These were 2 people who wanted money in a car and were willing to do just about anything to get it, and did.
These police and FBI agents were struck by how coldly Darren talks about the killing, and tend to believe he is just plain guilty. The judge agreed and ruled that Dungeons and Dragons had nothing to do with the death of Mary Towie. The jury found Darren Molitor, alias Demon Sammy Sager, guilty of first-degree murder, a life sentence, but no death penalty.
As you near the castle, 2 of the stone gargoyles come from above and swoop down trying to attack you.
The crucial point is, can a game create psychosis, or is someone like Darren Molitor an accident waiting to happen, with or without the game? Supporters of D&D suggest it might even keep psychosis under control, providing an outlet.
Can I give him a proper burial?
But the killings and suicides are extreme cases of the issue. Matthew here cried for days when his character died, and Bill's mother says at one point he got too involved.
I became concerned, and I spoke to the dungeon master about his behavior in the club. And he did admit that my son seemed to be becoming the character, taking on characteristics of his character. And I felt the same way. And I asked that he not go to the game for a while, and he agreed.
Here in Orangeville, another case raised the same questions. A 14-year-old boy, who cannot be named because he is a juvenile, strangled 2 young friends in this schoolyard. It was brought out in this Orangeville courtroom that the young defendant was deeply involved in playing Dungeons and Dragons and was in fact a dungeon master. But his preoccupation with the game was not considered a determining factor in forming his behavior, only typical of it. He was judged to have an obsessive-compulsive mental disorder and was acquitted by reason of legal insanity. The boy will be under care in a psychiatric institution for as long as necessary. Meanwhile, the game goes on. D&D has been banned in some Canadian schools, but is used by others like this one in programs for gifted children. Some teachers feel this role-playing is valuable social interaction and say it even improves reading and mathematics skills and knowledge of mythology and history. Much depends on the dungeon master, the group leader who controls the scenario, putting in as much or as little blood and gore as he likes. Here, Denny is the dungeon master.
Well, it gives you a great sense of control and power over other people, because, you can determine what happens to the characters. And it's really kind of neat, the feeling of power you get from it.
Does the game encourage or even create Denny's love of power, or is it a healthy outlet for it?
In the manual itself, you warn the kids not to get their characters mixed up with themselves.
It's not a warning. All it is saying is that you understand this is a game, and you're playing a character, and that's it.
Pat Pulling is suing TSR and the teachers who conducted the game in her son's school for $10 million. She wants research into the D&D phenomenon.
We would like to see these violent games, such as Dungeons and Dragons, taken out of toy stores and not pushed in school systems and remain for the adult population.
Well, I think the parents should get into the game to see how it is, and then they can start judging if they should let their child play or not. I only play here, and when I leave the store, I leave the game in the store. I go out into life.
You guys bury the body properly?
Perhaps this is the crux of the matter, how we deal with the undeniable love of violence in our species. D&D has taken it a step beyond even TV and movies and books, into the inner mind. Millions enjoy that voyage, but we don't really know how many others find unsuspected dragons in their psychic dungeons. How, then, do we deal with our demons?
As you're walking over the drawbridge, the old rotten wood gives way beneath your feet, and you fall 1,500 meters down. So you have died. I'm sorry, but that's life.
For the Journal, this is Carol Jerome.
Feeling brave tonight? How brave? Brave enough to do battle with hideous monsters? Brave enough to sneak around dank castles in the dark and chance being the next victim of a dragon strike?
All right, your sunstone's done. So what do you want me to do with it?
Let darkness reign, and in the darkness let evil grow. Is this like a video game? Sorta. But it uses the most powerful information processor in the world. Your brain.
Cool, so how do we play?
Do we have to read a bunch of rules?
Not this time. This time I'm the Dragon Master, and you are the adventurers.
Is it okay if I watch until I get the hang of it?
You don't need the hang of anything. Imagination is all you need. Close your eyes. Open your mind, and I'll transport you to another realm.
Oh, yeah?
It's night. A long time ago. You see a castle. This castle belongs to the evil wizard Teraptus. The castle's high towers and jagged walls glow in the light like the dull white of a skull. You sense magic in the air. Your nose is assaulted by the stench of death and decay. You're struck by the stillness of death. Then you hear footsteps and see a young wizard running down a path which leads from Teraptus' castle. and you see what looks like a dagger sticking out of his back.
Is he a good guy or a bad guy?
You will know soon enough. Now I'm going to take you to a very different castle. This is the castle of King Halvar II. He takes himself quite seriously, and so do some of his subjects. It's a typical boisterous night in the king's banquet hall. Ale flows, games of chance are played, ridiculous tales are told, lusty songs are sung. Little do they know of the strange events that are descending upon them.
Who dares disturb my banquet?
It appears to be a wizard.
No question about it. He's a wizard.
Refrain from disturbing his personal effects, thief. At least until he's dead.
I was only checking his identity.
Stand aside.
We'll know all about him if he lives. If he dies, it won't matter who he was. It's not a knife. It's a tooth. A tooth freshly ripped from the jaws of a dragon. Summon all your life force! Chase the death out from your bones. Let life flow. Forge yourself anew.
Look, he lives.
Thank you, Cloric. By healing me, you may have spared 1,000 lives.
Warrior, I sense the presence of evil very near. Tonight's omens bode ill.
The wizard escaped our captivity once. Return unto us. I will spare you.
I will not tolerate this insult!
Return him! Or I will turn this banquet hall into a charnel house.
Fight valiantly! I shall return.
Very well.
Kill them all!
As usual, you overestimate your accomplishment!
Stop him! They're killing all the guards! Cleric, use your magic!
Death Knight, heal, return to peace!
Subjects! Together we have vanquished.
Where did you run to, Lord Fear?
For that we should all be commended.
You do not host this banquet. Death hosts this banquet. Now pay close attention, because the information you're about to hear could mean the difference between life and death.
Have you not noticed the darkness upon this land? The unholy darkness? It spreads even as we speak. It is created by a sunstone and comes from the castle of Taraptus.
I have enough problems without listening to this ridiculous prattle. Guards, eject this elf.
Dear, I think all the guards are dead.
Oh dear.
Eject him, and I fear you squander your only chance to save your kingdom. He speaks the truth. Taraptus' power grows stronger with every beat of our hearts. Taraptus is a wizard of guile and charisma. He promised a golden age, and many fools followed. He is truly and deeply evil.
Have you any proof?
As for the Sunstone, witness the darkness which envelops the land. As for my quest, observe the tooth extracted from my back. And as for Taraptus' ability to raise the dead, cast your eyes upon the Death Knights. The Sunstone must be destroyed.
Quest with me. To this den of evil where we will bind Taraptus and drive a stake in his heart. Can I play the warrior?
You're on.
Well, now what do I do?
As a warrior, your job is to be on the front line. You aren't afraid of anything.
Well, do I use any magic?
No. You think magic is for wimps. Warriors have a motto. Sharp swords, settled scores.
Well, how about if I play the thief?
Your thief is more or less of the Robin Hood variety. She steals from the evil and gives to the good. When thieves aren't fighting, they specialize in picking locks, climbing walls, lurking in dark shadows, and disarming traps.
I want to play the elf.
Elves are a mysterious and ancient race. As an elf, your skill with a bow is legendary. And more importantly, you possess the secret knowledge of elven lore.
Okay, I want to play the wizard.
You're on. As their name implies, wizards use magic and avoid physical confrontation at all costs. Wizards prefer to stay in the background and cast spells. But here is something very important never to forget. Once a wizard casts a spell, that spell is spent.
Now, I got it wired.
Good. Because I almost neglected to tell you. You lost your wand as you fled Taraptus' castle.
What a rip. How do I get a new one?
Try asking the king.
Your Majesty. Might I borrow a wand from your treasury? Mine was lost at Taraptus' castle. Jester!
Do you have a wand for this bereft wizard?
Of course, Your Majesty. I live to serve you. I have just the wand.
You notice this is the same wand that you lost.
Is there a problem?
Close your eyes and imagine you are your character. Imagine you're a warrior with arms of steel. Imagine you're a thief who slips stealthily like a shadow in the night. Imagine you're a wizard with magic coursing through your veins. Imagine you're an elf who silently stalks through the forest with a deadly bow. Imagine the treasure, the power, and imagine the evil you will smite on your great adventure.
Fellow adventurers, we have been honored with a king's quest.
Big honor.
It comes as no surprise to me that honor is not an issue for you. To thieves, there is no difference between good and evil. As for me, I dedicate my quest to King Halvor II, Master of the Realm, Lord of the Lands.
Greedy pontificating buffoon!
I will not have you speaking ill of my king.
Why is he doing that?
Stop your petty human bickering. Our cause will serve the good of nature.
The only way that goodness will be served will be by separating Taraptus from his infernal magic.
Are we gonna stand here talking all night, or are we gonna nail Taraptus?
They are not mutually exclusive options. If we don't nail Taraptus, the night will never end.
Wizard, I should tell you I don't like your headgear. Are you not familiar with the wizard's magical transformation?
No, I am not.
No animal was lost. I was transformed to a coyote to learn the ways of nature.
Have you forgotten our quest? Onward!
Onward.
Move on.
With whom are you communicating now, Elf?
He speaks of present danger.
Stand aside!
I thought you were a friend of the trees.
I speak to their spirits. This one was corrupted by sorcery.
What would make a sorcerer so evil?
Taraptus shall suffer for his perversion of nature.
Look! The magic within those walls, if unleashed, could destroy the entire kingdom. If it were used for good, it would create a golden age. A golden age of running brooks and fireflies and summer nights.
Gather close, quickly! Quickly, wizard!
Fight! Voice sounds dangerously familiar.
Let's hurry up and get out of here before the dragon comes to search again. Now shut up, walk slow.
Yeah, I hate working for sorcerers. Sorcerers! Like this miserable Taraptus. They never pay. You always end up broke. You! I mean, me! I go to collect my money, and next thing you know, I'm hypnotized into saying I don't want it. Alright. I don't want it. I mean, I do want it. But they tricked me. I just told you. I mean, me. Don't you pay any attention.
Hey, Elf. What is this thing?
You miserable...
An owlbear. They're not nearly as extinct as they should be.
Except you and me.
Try flattering him.
I talk to
Flattering
you. I can have better company up here. You know,
hey, handsome.
Oh, hey, come back right there.
Congratulations. You have infiltrated your first castle.
So now where do we go?
Go anywhere you want.
If I didn't want to be with the rest of these guys, could I go off on my own?
Of course. At your own risk.
You left this around the owlbear's neck.
Okay, I got us in here. Now you take us to Taraptus.
There are many twists and turns in this castle. I'm only familiar with some of them.
I thought you infiltrated this place.
Taraptus uses his magic to constantly shift the walls.
Then how will you know where we'll find him?
I don't. In fact, I'm not sure I'll know him if I see him. I've only seen him once, and that was in a shadow.
Great. We have a guide who doesn't know where he's going, leaving us to a man he won't know on sight. You guys are on your own.
Well, that's fine. I work better alone anyways. If we split up, we'll be able to cover more territory.
Okay, thief. You're walking along. You hear something around a wall. What do you want to do?
I'll cut him to shreds.
Elf, you hear something. What do you want to do?
I'll set upon it with a vengeance.
Elf!
Thief.
Nothing back there.
Nothing here. Let's straight.
You come to the end of a corridor. That's odd. It doesn't seem like there should be a wall here.
I'll try to find a secret entrance.
Roll the die. You see something that confounds you. The wizard has stepped through the wall as if it were made of smoke.
Wizard, where are you?
Come on. You hear a laughing sound not too far away.
Does my elven lord tell me anything?
It sounds like a couple of stupid orcs.
These guys are too dumb to be dangerous. I don't want to hurt them.
Well, what were they guarding?
They're garbage.
Wizard and warrior, you see a shadow on the wall. It looks like a minotaur.
Well, let's go toast him.
Let's save our strength for something we really need to fight.
Well, only something truly worthwhile would warrant a door such as this.
Where's a thief when you need one?
You need a lot more than a thief.
Well, pick the lock, thief. That is what you're good for, isn't it?
Stand aside.
What are you doing?
Checking for traps.
Why didn't you do that before I tried opening it?
Because I figured if there were any traps, you would trigger them.
Oh, very funny. Guess we should have picked a better thief.
Why don't you smash it with your head? That seems to be all that it's good for, isn't it?
Major mistake.
You're on the brink of a fight to the death with a man-scorpion. Let's go through this battle one step at a time and then watch it all play out.
Well, I'm gonna try and roll out of the way.
Dexterity die?
Well, how do I find that out?
Look at your card under dexterity.
Well, it shows a blue die. Is that good?
Well, you, because you're so big and uncoordinated, have to roll a 6 or higher to dodge the man-scorpion.
Oh, very funny.
The elf will shoot an arrow.
You might hit your friend.
That's okay. I don't know him very well.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Just kidding.
Well, he might as well shoot. I'm dead if he doesn't.
I'll crack him with my whip.
And I'll cast a magic missile.
So let's put it all together and see what happens.
Great, I got a defective wand. I'll throw a spell.
Which one?
Hold person.
The spell takes effect. It's as if he's working in slow motion.
I'll grab a stinger and try and stab him with it.
Roll the die. He's dead, killed by his own poison.
If Taraptus put a man-scorpion in here, he must be guarding something.
Forget him and get me out, you idiot! Who's calling us idiot? If you know what's good for you, you'll use your thick skulls for something and find me, you fools!
Voice sounds dwarfen.
Brilliant deduction, you fakester! Now get me out!
Why should we help one who insults us?
Who is this fount of stupidity?
I am Greenthorn, the elf.
Oh! I'm shaking in my boots. You mumbling tree nuzzler! I am the one who fashioned the Sunstone from a solid block of ice, and I'm the only one who can destroy it. Believe me, I don't look forward to your company any more than you look forward to mine.
Can we trust this guy?
You'd be a fool to trust me. But just because you can't trust me doesn't mean you don't need me.
I'm not fond of dwarves. But if we need him, we have no choice.
Dwarf, if you made the Sunstone, why has Taraptus imprisoned you?
Are you gonna let me out or not?
Not until you answer the question.
If I did answer it, you wouldn't believe my answer, would you?
Well, he has a point.
The answer is obvious. If the dwarf created the Sunstone, he can also destroy it. So to protect it from destruction, the sorcerer has jailed the dwarf. Now where's your door?
There is no door, you half-wit! You only make a door if you plan on releasing somebody. He never planned on letting me go. I'm walled in here!
It'll take us all night to knock down a wall.
Not with my hammer?
If your hammer is so great, why don't you use it to knock the wall down?
Because I don't have my hammer, you dunderhead! It's on the man-scorpion's belt.
This doesn't look like much of a hammer to me.
Then don't look at it. Use it, you dupe! Out!
Much to your amazement, the wall shatters, revealing a dwarf. But unfortunately, the spell has caused the whole room to crumble into nothingness, and you all tumble into a black void.
You're going?
Shh! Maybe I know something you don't know.
Taraptus!
King's jester?
I should have known when you returned my wand to me.
Failure is made of should-haves.
The king will be very interested to know who you really are.
Unfortunately for you, will be unable to warn the king of my true identity. Rise up, flames. Rise up, fire elemental. Use your rage to engulf my enemies.
All the men are mesmerized by the fire elemental.
Boys, snap out of it! Dwarf, throw your hammer at the Sunstone!
Throw your own hammer, Thomas!
Trouble! We're in real trouble.
Come on, guys! I've got an idea. The fire elemental is made of fire, and the sunstone is made of ice.
Let's put the two together.
I'll take two of the supports out with arrows. I'll take one out with a magic missile.
I've got a dagger for the other one.
Now you're working together!
I thought they were supposed to be tough. The spell is broken.
Look, thief, there are jewels where the elemental was.
We gotta kill these things more often. Oh, just a few more?
Beware! He's using his power to change.
I'd like to know you can use something like your big mouth.
Take that flame breath!
We gotta get out of here before he takes another breath.
Through the magic portal.
I dislike some magic.
Anywhere's better than here?
Suit yourself.
You again?
We just came from Teraptus' castle.
Teraptus is your jester.
Surely you jest.
How do we stop him?
Still comes! Face me, Teraptus.
What power do you hold over Teraptus?
The power to heal him. To kill the undead is to heal them.
I owe you my life.
It is an honor to serve you, King Halvar II. Master of the realm, Lord of the lands, to you I owe my fealty.
I appreciate the fealty. Now, bring me the jewels.
Surrender the jewels to Halvar II, King of the kings and Lord of all the lands.
Okay, I'll surrender the jewels. Just spare me the titles.
Well,
Ow! Have you all failed to notice the real treasure? The green we have brought to this land.
The difference between us is that you love green and I love gold. Unfortunately, so does the king.
Well, shall we venture to Strathmore Castle?
Yeah, when I'm broke again.
Oh, too bad. For I have no use for the jewels within.
Did you say jewels?
The video you've just seen represents elements from many of the adventures in your Dragon Strike game box. Do not turn the VCR off yet. This is a special section of the tape for Dragon Masters only. When everyone who is not presently interested in becoming a Dragon Master has left the room, we may begin. Until then, kindly cast a pause video spell on your VCR. Are you sure nobody's listening at the door? At the window? Very well. Then we can proceed. As you've just seen, the Dragon Strike game is unlike any game you've ever played before. In what other game can you visit the nastiest castles in the world and bring your friends along for the ride? The key is that all the players must work together as a team in order to win. And you, as the Dragon Master, must make the world unfold before their very eyes. Your role is all important. You set the stage for the players, presenting the quest they must follow. Only you know where the treasure is buried. Only you know where the clues are hidden. And only you know where the dangers lie. Now don't forget, a great Dragon Master isn't afraid to ham it up. Sure, the monsters just want to beat the heroes up, but it's a lot more fun when they do it with style.
Rise up, fire elemental. Use your rage to engulf my enemies.
The game rules and adventure cards will give you tips about what the monster might say. The rest of the time, just make it up. Follow the game's guidelines about how smart the monster is and what motivates him, and have fun with it.
I'm walled in here!
The instructions will tell you that the dwarf is telling the truth. And when the chips are down, he'll help the party. A Dragon Master can win the game if the players make bad moves, move too slowly, or don't act together as a team. To make the game more challenging for the heroes, you get to set some of the traps at the start of each adventure. But that doesn't mean you can cheat. or ignore the rules. For example, if a monster is about to die, resist the temptation to save it. In fact, there's really only one rule to being a great Dragon Master. The real object of the game is for everybody to have fun. And if the game isn't fair, nobody will. Now you have all the secret knowledge you need. I'll give you one way to start. Feeling brave tonight? How brave? Brave enough to do battle with hideous monsters? Brave enough to sneak around dank castles in the dark and chance being the next victim of a dragon strike?